I was driving in Nashville, Tennessee this week, and I passed a stretch of road that to anybody else would be very unassuming. But it was on that stretch of road that my life changed forever. It was on that stretch that 18 years ago I received the news that my dad had cancer. The day and those memories came flooding back just like it had just happened. At the time, I'd only been a nurse for 5 years, and I didn't know anything about cancer or chemotherapy or any of this stuff. I had no idea that this diagnosis was about to consume our everyday lives for the next 17 months. I wish I could tell you that he survived, but sadly he did not. I was by his side when he took his last breath. Now, I know you all are thinking, this is a very uplifting story, Dan. But we're supposed to be celebrating life, so just stick with me. I had to tell you all of that because I did a poll of the inpatient nurses, and the majority of them had similar stories to mine. We've all been affected by cancer in one way or another, and it's made us the nurses that we are today. I had to tell you all of that so that you could understand why we do what we do. Well, my dad didn't have the diagnosis of leukemia or lymphoma. It was still just as scary. Our family went through some of the same emotions, some of the same fears that you all did. The fear of the unknown, the uncertainty of tomorrow, the helpless feeling of not being able to fix it. No matter what type, the word cancer brings the same emotions to all of us. 12 years ago, I was encouraged by a family friend to accept a position in oncology, and I never dreamed it would bring me to where I am today. As inpatient nurses, we're with a lot of you from the beginning of diagnosis to remission, through treatment, through transplant, and then we get to celebrate your success when you walk out that hospital door. We're there through some of the lowest points of your journey. We try to encourage you and your family to stay strong and keep fighting. There were days when many of you thought, oh man, here she comes with that stupid smile on her face and she's gonna make me get out of bed. And I did. I remember Adriana, where are you? I remember Adriana the day of her transplant. She had those bunny ears on, and Dr. Mutu came in and she said, you see what that rabbit hormone just did to me? I remember bringing my daughter's princess puzzles to Miss Linda. She was one of our first transplants, and we've not seen her since. She won't ever come back to visit us. But I brought her some puzzles so that she wouldn't be bored to tears. And the next day she got mad at me and she said, Jan, those puzzles were too hard and they were missing pieces. And then Mr. Allen and his IV pole that he always dressed up like a hula girl, he said Joyce was his first girlfriend, so he called his hula girl Joyce. He said she was just as flat as his chemo pole. And then a nurse told a story on Mr. Allen that he always had this little bottle of rum chata that he hid in his bedside table that he would pour in his morning coffee every morning. Oh, goodness. Rhonda, where are you? Remember the day of transplant when you accidentally pulled out your PICC line? I don't know who was more freaked out, you or your nurse Crystal. But we got it back in and we got those cells in. And then Megan. Oh, Megan. Megan had my cell phone number and I told her I was in another patient's room. She texted me. She said, I don't feel right. And I said, well, I'm fixing to go to lunch. And I said, don't you dare have a seizure on me because they freak me out. She waited until I got back from lunch to have that seizure with me right in the room. And then there was the nurses getting a phone call from the ER because Katrina had gone out for a walk and decided to fall off the curb. And then Mr. King, I don't know, I'm sure some of y'all remember Mr. King, his grand entrance. He came in for his first day after interventional radiology, getting his line placed, had an anaphylactic reaction, and we had to just stop whatever doctors stopped by that day. He did fun, and then he wore his wig, his celebration wig, on his way out and danced with all the nurses when he left the hospital. And then there's Mr. Juarez, who taught all the night shift nurses cuss words in Spanish. So, yeah, there's so many stories that we have. There really are, but my most favorite one happened just a couple of days ago. Mr. Brock came and visited our floor. It was his 1-year transplant anniversary. He had just gotten his immunizations, and he thought, I'll just pop by E7, tell the nurses thank you. He did, and then after that, he looked at me and he said, is there anybody here that's getting a transplant that maybe is needing some encouragement? And there was one that was just not doing very well. And so he went and he talked to him and he encouraged him. He said, man, just take it one day at a time. And really, really was what he needed at that time. But what was even more wonderful was the fact that he took his hand and he said, I'm gonna pray with you. And he prayed with him. And then he left. And the next day, that patient looked at me and said, that's just what I needed. You see, you don't realize what an encouragement you are, not only to us nurses, but to those who are walking in your footsteps right now. You all have come such a long way from the days of your diagnosis. You are why we do what we do. Your success is our success. Thank you for making us a part of your family and trusting us to care for you during your journey. You're forever a part of our E7 family.